We all have that one small moment we wish we could redo. The time we said, "Not now," and watched a child's face dim a little. Bills, schedules, grown-up worries pile up until later becomes a habit we don't notice. Then a kid puts a hand to a cold window and everything goes quiet. A scruffy dog stares back through the glass like he recognizes the ache you've been hiding, and a voice beside you whispers, "Daddy, can I buy that dog?" Most people would do the math and keep walking. He almost did, but the look in her eyes and his own staring back at him from that dog made Jasonstatham stop, breathe, and choose something that didn't make sense on paper and made perfect sense everywhere else. Before we continue, I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here. Every time you tune in, share your thoughts, or simply take a few minutes out of your day to listen to these stories, you make this little community what it is. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to join us by subscribing. Not just to catch the next story, but to be part of something we build together, stories that remind us that kindness, courage, and hope still matter in this noisy world. All right, let's get back to it. It was one of those evenings that sit between silence and storm, too quiet to be peaceful, too heavy to be calm. The city buzzed softly around them, car horns in the distance, rain-slick streets glowing under orange streetlights, and the faint scent of roasted nuts from a corner vendor. Jasonstatham walked slowly beside his daughter, Emma, her small hand buried in his, her pink scarf fluttering against the wind. They didn't talk much anymore, not because there was nothing to say, but because sometimes silence was easier than facing what words could never fix. It had been 2 years since Emma's mother and Jason's wife had passed. Cancer, they said, quick, cruel, and merciless. Jason had fought battles all his life, in the army, in the ring, in the streets, but this one was different. This was the kind of fight you never win, the kind that leaves you walking around afterward, wondering why you're still standing. He looked down at his daughter, 8 years old, eyes too old for her age. Her mother's eyes. She was quiet, but Jason could see her mind working, always thinking, always carrying more than a child should. "Cold?" he asked, finally breaking the silence. She shook her head, smiling faintly. "No, Daddy." They turned the corner, passing a row of shops beginning to close for the night. The air smelled faintly of rain and warm bread. Jason thought of stopping for hot chocolate, something to make her smile again, but she slowed before he could say a word. Her eyes had locked onto something. There, tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore, was a small pet shop. The window glowed gold from the inside. In the display, a tiny dog, brown, scruffy, one ear drooping, sat alone behind the glass. It wasn't doing anything special, just sitting, watching, waiting. But somehow, that little dog looked like it was waiting for her. Emma pressed her hand to the window, her breath fogging up the glass. "Daddy," she whispered, "he looks sad." Jason followed her gaze. The dog blinked slowly, then shuffled forward until its nose touched the glass right under Emma's palm. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world around them faded, the cars, the lights, the noise. It was just the girl and the dog, two lost souls staring at each other like they'd known each other forever. "Come on," Jason said softly. "It's late." But Emma didn't move. "Can we just say hi?" she pleaded. Before he could answer, the door opened. A young woman in a blue apron poked her head out. "We're just closing up," she said kindly. Emma looked up at her with those big, hopeful eyes. "Please, just for a minute." The woman hesitated, then smiled. "All right, just a minute, but be gentle, he's a little shy." Jason sighed but followed them in. The bell above the door jingled softly. Inside, the air was warm and filled with the smell of hay and soap. The dog sat up straighter when Emma knelt by the cage. "Hi, buddy," she whispered. "It's okay, you're not alone." The dog sniffed, her fingers, tail wagging slowly. The young woman leaned on the counter. "His name's Milo," she said. "He was rescued from the streets a few months ago. He's got a limp, but he's a sweet one." Jason crouched beside his daughter. "Hey, champ," he said quietly, offering his hand. Milo sniffed, then leaned forward, resting his head against the bars. Emma looked up at her dad. "Can we take him home?" Jason froze. It was such an innocent question, asked so softly, but it hit him like a punch to the gut. He saw the bills stacked on his kitchen counter, the late notice from the landlord, the extra night shifts he'd taken just to keep their heads above water. He could barely afford groceries some weeks, let alone a dog. "Sweetheart," he began. But she was already looking at him differently. "Please, Daddy, he needs someone." Jason swallowed hard. "Honey, we can't. Dogs are a lot of work. He needs food, medicine, walks." "I can help," she interrupted quickly. "I'll feed him, I'll take him out, I promise." Jason smiled sadly. "It's not that simple." Emma's face fell. She turned back to the cage, pressing her forehead to the bars. Milo whined softly, as if he understood. "Someone else will love him," she whispered. "Right." Jason opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The shopkeeper spoke gently. "He's been here a long time," she said. "Most people want younger dogs or ones without scars." Jason nodded, eyes on the small creature now curled up in the corner. "Yeah," he murmured, "some scars scare people off." They left a few minutes later. The streetlights flickered overhead as they walked in silence. Jason could hear her sniffing softly beside him, though she tried to hide it. He wanted to tell her something comforting, something wise. But all he could think about was that dog's eyes, and how much they looked like his daughter's when she woke up crying from dreams she didn't want to talk about. Back home, Jason reheated leftovers neither of them really ate. Emma went straight to bed, still wearing her scarf. He checked on her later, the little nightlight glowing, her small hand curled around her stuffed bear. He stood there for a while just watching her breathe. She looked so peaceful, and yet he knew the sadness didn't sleep, it just hid until morning. Jason sat on the couch and ran a hand through his hair. The TV flickered quietly, showing some late-night show he didn't care about. His wallet sat on the table beside an unopened envelope from the landlord. He opened it, another warning, 2 weeks. He sighed, leaned back and closed his eyes. But no matter how hard he tried to shut it out, he kept seeing that look, Emma's face pressed to the glass, her voice saying, "He needs someone." The next morning, he dropped her off at school early. She smiled when he kissed her head, but it didn't reach her eyes. As he drove to work, something inside him kept gnawing at him. He'd spent his whole life being the man who fixed things. But how do you fix sadness in a child who's already lost too much? By noon, he couldn't take it anymore. He pulled over, turned the car around, and headed back toward the pet shop. The same bell chimed as he entered. The young woman behind the counter blinked in surprise. "You're back." Jason nodded. "That dog, Milo, he's still here." She smiled faintly. "Yeah, you thinking about adopting?" He rubbed his neck, thinking about something. She led him to the back. Milo perked up instantly, tail wagging. Jason crouched down, staring at the little creature. "Hey, mate," he said softly. "You're not making this easy, are you?" The dog tilted his head, as if answering. Jason took a deep breath. "I don't have much," he admitted, "but maybe you don't need much either." He looked up at the woman. "What's the adoption fee?" She hesitated. "It's £180, covers vaccines and papers." Jason pulled out his wallet. He had £210 left. That was supposed to cover gas for the week, food. He hesitated, then nodded. "Let's do it." The woman smiled. "You sure?" He nodded again, more firmly this time. "Yeah, my daughter, she'll need to see that good things still happen." An hour later, when he pulled up to Emma's school, Milo was sitting in the passenger seat beside him, wearing a small blue collar and looking equally confused and happy. When Emma walked out and saw the car window rolled down, saw that same scruffy face staring back at her, she froze. Her backpack hit the ground. "Daddy," she whispered, hands covering her mouth. Jason grinned. "You think he remembers you?" She ran forward, hugging him first, then the dog. Milo barked softly, licking her cheek as she cried into his fur. Jason stood there, trying not to let his own tears fall. He'd faced men with guns, stood down gangsters, stared death in the eye. But nothing hit harder than seeing his little girl smile again. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the floor of their tiny apartment, Milo asleep between them. Emma fed him bits of bread, giggling as he tried to catch them in midair. Jason leaned back, just watching. For the first time in years, the air in the room felt different, lighter. He looked at the photo of his wife on the shelf. "You'd like him," he whispered. And though he'd bought a dog that day, what he really brought home was something far rarer, a reason to believe again. As the night deepened and the city hummed beyond their window, Emma fell asleep on the couch, Milo curled up by her side. Jason covered them both with a blanket. He turned off the lights, whispered a quiet goodnight, and for the first time in a long while, smiled without forcing it. He didn't know it yet, but that small decision, born from love and loss, would soon lead them both into something unexpected, something that would test just how far a father would go to keep his child's happiness alive. Morning light slipped through the blinds, striping the small apartment in soft gold. The city was just waking, buses rumbling, vendors opening shutters, and inside, a new rhythm was beginning to form. Jasonstatham woke to the sound of small feet padding across the floor. Emma's laughter, light and unguarded, filled the air for the first time in months. He opened his eyes to see her sitting on the carpet, hair messy, still in her pajamas, holding Milo's paw and whispering secrets to him. Jason leaned against the doorway watching them. She looked happy. Really happy. And for that moment, he didn't care about the rent, the bills, or the world outside. He brewed a pot of coffee and sat down with his mug, half smiling as he listened to her giggles. "You're spoiling him already," he said. Emma turned around, eyes bright. "He had a nightmare, Daddy. I told him it's okay now, he's safe here." Jason nodded softly. "Guess we all need someone to tell us that sometimes." He didn't say it out loud, but her words hit him deeper than she'd ever know. The next few days felt different, lighter. Mornings had laughter again. Jason caught himself humming while making breakfast. Milo followed them everywhere, even waiting by the bathroom door like a furry shadow. He was awkward, clumsy, and barked at the kettle like it had insulted him, but he was part of them now. Still, Jason couldn't ignore the practical side of things. He'd spent nearly everything on the adoption, and payday was still a week away. He picked up extra shifts at the security job, coming home late, exhausted, but the sight of Emma and Milo asleep together on the couch made it worth it every time. One Friday night, as he sat on the steps outside the apartment building after work, a neighbor named Tom walked over, lighting a cigarette. "Heard you got a dog," Tom said, smirking. "That's bold, mate. They're not cheap." Jason just shrugged. "Some things aren't about money." Tom chuckled. "Sure, but bills don't care about reasons." Jason didn't answer. He just stared into the distance, the smoke curling between them. He wasn't going to let anyone turn something good into a mistake. But fate, as always, had its way of testing good decisions. A few days later, Jason came home early for once. He wanted to surprise Emma with takeaway, her favorite noodles. The elevator was out again, so he climbed the stairs, humming under his breath. When he reached their floor, he heard barking. Not playful barking, scared barking. His pulse quickened. He rushed to the door and saw it slightly ajar. He burst in. Milo was cowering by the couch, ears pinned back. Emma was sitting on the floor, crying. A man, someone Jason didn't recognize, stood by the window, clipboard in hand, wearing a navy vest with a city emblem. Jason's voice was sharp. "Who are you?" The man turned calmly. "Animal control. We got a call, noise complaint, possible unlicensed adoption." Jason stepped between the man and Emma. "He's chipped. Got the papers right here." He grabbed the folder from the counter, hands tense. "Who called you?" The man flipped through his papers. "Neighbor downstairs. Said the dog was left alone and barking for hours." Jason frowned. "I was at work for 4 hours. My daughter was here with him." The man sighed. "Look, I just follow protocol. We need to verify he's not causing disturbance." Emma wiped her tears. "He didn't do anything wrong." Jason's jaw clenched. "He's not going anywhere." The man hesitated. Something in Jason's eyes, the steady, cold calm that soldiers get, told him this wasn't a conversation he wanted to push. He nodded. "All right, I'll mark it checked. Just keep it quiet, okay?" Jason nodded stiffly. "Yeah, you have my word." When the door closed behind the man, Emma ran to hug Milo tightly. Jason crouched beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" She nodded against his chest. "They were going to take him." "Not while I'm here," Jason said, voice steady but low. "No one takes family." That night after Emma went to bed, Jason sat by the window, watching the city lights blink against the glass. Milo lay at his feet, eyes half open, as if sensing his thoughts. "You're trouble, aren't you, mate?" Jason murmured, scratching behind his ear. But I guess that makes two of us. He leaned back, staring at the photo of his wife on the shelf, her smile frozen in time. "You'd tell me I'm crazy," he said softly, "but you'd also tell me I did the right thing." He stayed up late that night, running numbers, trying to stretch the week's money a little further. He was tired, but something about the sound of his daughter's steady breathing from the next room kept him grounded. For the first time in years, he wasn't fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for them. Weeks passed. Milo adjusted, still limping a little but stronger. He became Emma's shadow, following her to school gates and waiting by the door every afternoon. The neighbors even started to smile when they saw them, the tough ex-soldier with a soft heart, the kid who brought laughter to the block again, and the scrappy dog that tied them all together. But peace never lasts long. One Friday evening, Jason came home late. The hallway was dark, the apartment door was open. His heart froze. He burst inside and found Emma crying again. Milo was gone. "What happened?" he demanded, dropping to his knees. She sobbed, barely getting the words out. "There was a man," he said. "He was from the shelter. He said we didn't fill out some form. I tried to stop him, but he just left with Milo." Jason's vision blurred with anger. His voice was low, cold, dangerous. "Did you see his face?" She nodded, trembling. "He had a blue jacket. There was a van, white with no logo." Jason stood up slowly. He'd seen enough cons in his life to recognize one. Somebody had stolen their dog, maybe for money, maybe worse. Either way, he wasn't letting it go. He kissed Emma's forehead. "Stay here, lock the door, I'll find him." "Daddy." "I'll find him," he repeated, softer this time. He left the building without looking back. The streets were alive with Friday noise, but Jason's mind was razor-focused. He called the pet shop owner, explained what happened. She sounded horrified. "That's not us. No one from my team was scheduled for anything like that." Jason's instincts kicked in. The van, the fake badge, it was too organized to be random. He'd seen these patterns before: stolen dogs sold through back alleys or illegal breeders. He tracked down the old security contacts he still had in the city. One name came up again and again: a man named Riker, running an unlicensed adoption ring from the industrial district. Jason knew where that was. An hour later, his truck rolled quietly into the shadowed alley behind a warehouse. The sound of barking echoed faintly from inside. He clenched his jaw and walked toward the side door. Two men stood outside, smoking. "Evening," Jason said calmly. They glanced at him. "We're closed, mate." "Funny," Jason said. "That's what the sign said when I bought my dog." The taller one frowned. "You got a problem." Jason's eyes didn't waver. "Yeah, you've got something that belongs to my daughter." A pause, then laughter. "You one of those sentimental types?" Jason took one step closer. "No, I'm one of those types that doesn't ask twice." The taller man swung first. Jason moved like the world slowed down: a sharp elbow, a twist, a clean takedown. The second guy tried to rush him. Jason pivoted, caught his wrist, and sent him crashing against the wall. The door burst open. Inside, dim lights revealed a row of cages, dogs scared and whimpering. And in the corner, Milo, barking weakly, tail thumping when he saw him. Jason knelt by the cage. "Easy, mate, you're going home." He picked the lock with a fallen keyring and lifted Milo gently into his arms. The dog licked his chin, whining softly. That's when a voice called from behind him. "That's private property, friend." Jason turned. A man in a suit too clean for the place stood near the stairs, holding a ledger. Jason stared him down. "You take pets from kids now." The man smirked. "Business is business. Everything's got a price." Jason's voice dropped an octave. "Not this one." The man took a step forward. "You think you can just walk out of here?" Jason shifted Milo in one arm, cracking his neck slightly. "I'm not thinking, I'm doing." The man signaled his guards. Jason didn't wait. He moved first, swift, precise, controlled. Years of training turned the chaos into choreography. Fists, knees, silence. When it was over, the warehouse was still again. Jason stood in the center, breathing steady, Milo clinging to his shirt. He looked back at the man on the floor, barely conscious. "If you ever come near my family again," he said quietly, You'll wish I hadn't been gentle tonight." Then he walked out. By the time Jason reached home, the city was asleep. He opened the door and Emma ran straight into his arms, tears streaming. "Milo," she cried as the dog wriggled free and jumped into her arms. Jason knelt, exhausted, smiling softly. "Told you I'd bring him back." She hugged him, face buried in his chest. "I knew you would, Daddy." He held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "You and me, kid, always." Days turned to weeks. The police later uncovered the ring. An anonymous tip led them to the warehouse. Jason never mentioned how they found it. Life went on. Not perfect, but peaceful. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Jason sat on the balcony with Milo at his feet and Emma asleep inside, clutching her stuffed bear. He looked out at the skyline, at the light slowly fading, and smiled. He wasn't rich, he wasn't unbroken, but his daughter laughed again, and that was enough. Because sometimes the bravest thing a man can do isn't fight enemies or chase glory. It's choosing love again, after life tried to take it away. And in the quiet glow of that evening, Jason whispered to no one in particular. "She asked for a dog and somehow she gave me back my life."